Good CGI can take a film to a whole nother level, but it can also ruin the experience if done poorly. Some movies have such bad CGI that it's embarrassing. Let's take a look at some of them, starting with a certain Scorpion King, The Mummy Returns. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson was already a big star in 2002, but he had never been in a movie before. Making his debut in the sequel to The Mummy must have been a dream come true for the up-and-coming actor, but something tells me he was disappointed about how it all turned out. Johnson's sudden arrival in the movie must have been planned as a big reveal, and it would have been if only the CGI had not been so horrible. I'd be tempted to give the movie a pass. It was made 2 whole decades ago after all. However, we gotta remember that this was the same year we got The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, and Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, 2 films with stunning CGI that stood the test of time. Instead of looking terrifying, the Scorpion King ended up looking like something out of a poorly rendered video game. It's a real shame, because it took a lot of the fun out of an otherwise excellent film. The Rock seems to have a tendency to star in films with bad CGI. The Mummy Returns wasn't the only movie he appeared in that made me want to wash my eyes out with soap. Skyscraper. The Rock's appearance in The Mummy Returns was pretty bad, but Skyscraper took things to a whole other level. Believe it or not, the movie's basically about Johnson trying to scale a skyscraper for various action-packed reasons. You'd expect the team behind the film to go for the best CGI possible, but that couldn't be further from the experience we actually ended up getting. Instead of being immersive and realistic, the CGI looks downright cartoonish. It's so hard to even pay attention because the terrible CGI keeps distracting you from what's going on. I'd be surprised if the filmmakers didn't get a solid budget for the CGI. After all, what else would we be showing up to watch it for if not some awesome visuals? That said, this isn't the first time an action movie has failed to deliver on its CGI promises. Having a big budget is one thing, but you also need to know how to use it. Next up, we have a major blockbuster action flick with CGI so bad I could barely believe it: The Matrix Reloaded. I still remember the day I first watched The Matrix. The crazy kung fu action scenes had me mesmerized, and the CGI was so seamless that I barely even noticed it when it was on screen. Unfortunately, the Wachowskis really dropped the ball with the second installment, at least as far as the CGI was concerned. If you've seen the film, you might remember that ridiculous fight scene where Neo takes on an endless army of Agent Smiths. Now, I will admit that the choreography was spectacular, but things started to get a little hairy when all the clones got involved. We start to enter some real uncanny valley territory at one point, with Neo's face looking like a wax figurine instead of a real person, and the clones barely look like they had faces at all. That's not to say that this is a bad movie. No, The Matrix Reloaded is actually a pretty decent flick in my humble opinion. All I'm saying is that it could have been way better if they just focused on giving us good CGI and a more cohesive plot instead of wasting time with popcorn philosophy. In fact, they might have made a better film if they had just toned down the CGI a bit. It's not always necessary after all, and I can think of at least one other film that would have been perfect if they had not forced some CGI into it: Star Wars: A New Hope.
Look, Jabba, next time you want to talk to me, come see me yourself. Don't send one of these twerps.
If someone were to ask you what the greatest sci-fi movie of all time was, I'm betting Star Wars would come to mind. We take it for granted now, but back in the 70s, people could not have imagined space wizards dueling with lightsabers and space stations that could destroy whole planets. So, if Star Wars is such an undisputed sci-fi GOAT, what's it doing on this list? Well, it all boils down to one terrible scene that they absolutely ruined in the re-release. Now, old school fans might remember that we only got to see Jabba in the flesh in Return of the Jedi. They'd shot a scene with the character for A New Hope, but they didn't have the budget to depict him properly. Fast forward to 1997, and George Lucas is looking to re-release the film. With CGI now on the market, Lucas decided to superimpose a computer-generated Jabba onto the original actor. Unfortunately, the tech still wasn't quite there yet. Jabba looked like he was melting, like he was suffering, like he didn't even want to be alive. I almost felt bad for the guy. Slug. In all fairness, I get why Lucas did what he did. CGI was an exciting new toy for filmmakers to play with, and he's just one of many directors that took things too far. If anything, we got off easy. It could have been way worse. It could have even been as bad as the next CGI heavy flick that I wish I could forget, The Polar Express.
Well, you coming?
Back when this movie came out, motion capture seemed like it was gonna be the next big thing, and I blame Andy Serkis. The guy was phenomenal in Lord of the Rings and King Kong, and he and Peter Jackson showed the world just what motion capture could do. Unfortunately, that gave Robert Zemeckis some bright ideas, specifically the idea to make a movie that's animated entirely through motion capture. His biggest mistake was trying to make the animated characters look lifelike, which is something I never understood. I mean, if you want the characters to look realistic, why not just film the actors themselves? Regardless, Zemeckis soldiered on, and what we got was an embarrassing display of CGI that looked flat, lifeless, and utterly strange. You'd think that filmmakers would have learned their lesson after The Polar Express left such a bad taste in people's mouths, but they kept treating CGI as some kind of silver bullet ever since. Just take a look at this next movie, which has perhaps some of the most hilariously bad CGI I've ever seen: Cats. Don't get me wrong, I love Cats, the musical I mean, also the animal of course. However, just because something works well on stage doesn't mean it can translate to the big screen, especially when you think that CGI is gonna solve all your problems. When Cats was released in 2019, I honestly didn't even hate it that much. It was actually kind of funny, in a way that watching someone walk into a glass wall is funny. What's even funnier is that the film flopped despite having stars like Ian McKellen and Idris Elba attached. I guess big names don't matter when you awkwardly impose their faces onto a CGI body. To be fair, the CGI honestly isn't half bad, at least from a technical point of view. It's just that the filmmakers made some questionable choices with it. For one thing, did the cats in Cats really have to be that realistic? Especially when the faces look like they were basically just copy-pasted on. It's almost like they got tired halfway and decided to phone it in at the last minute. Whatever the reason, the results were creepy with a capital C, and those were some of the most embarrassing uses of CGI in movies. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.